Hi, this is Dave, and before we get to the show, I wanted to ask you a favor. One of our goals this year is to grow the show so that What Does Star Wars Mean to You reaches more listeners. And that's where we're asking you for help. And it's really easy. Wherever you listen to us, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on the platform you listen to us. We make a lot of fun of the algorithm and the smash that button thing, but it really does help us get noticed by new fans. And if you want to join in on the conversation, find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 in the letter U. Now, let's chat some Star Wars. Hello there. This is Dave, and you're listening to What Does Star Wars Mean to You? The show where we talk to all kinds of fans of Star Wars, from industry insiders to indie artists, from mega collectors to obsessive mythologists, to find out how Star Wars impacted their life. Here's the thing, there's a lot of ways to look at Star Wars, and it's all from a certain point of view, and that point of view is yours. And let's face it, we all love what we all love about Star Wars, and I believe that listening to someone talk passionately about what they love can open your own mind to new points of views. Also, it's just fun to talk Star Wars. So I want to change the conversation from what is right or wrong about Star Wars to what does Star Wars mean to you? Today, it's episode 19 and my conversation with content creator Michael Barryte. Now, I'm going to say this up front. I was a little jealous of his voice. He's just got a good, baritone voice. Now, Michael is the creator of the YouTube videos, What If the Prequels Were Good? And a friend of mine connected us, and at first I was a little weary because I didn't want to do something that was too much just hate on the prequels. But through our conversation, I discovered that Michael is actually a fan of the prequels, and this was a passion project about a creative challenge. Now, you can find his work on YouTube under Belated Media and on Twitter at Belated Media. He's also working on a comic book series called OBITUARY, a series about the living and the dead that you can find and read online. And all these links are in the podcast notes. But before we get to that conversation, a couple of things. It's Thursday, June 29th, and it's 55 days until the premiere of Ahsoka. Now, I've been talking about starting a Rebels rewatch, and I haven't yet, and I feel like I need to do that, but should I? If you've been listening to the show for a while, I've been thinking a lot about speculation and how, as a fan, it affects your expectations, which then affects your experience. It's almost like Yoda's speech, how fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. But instead, it's speculation leads to expectation. Expectation leads to affecting experience. Affecting experience leads to posting angry and hateful comments on Twitter, I guess. Look, for me, I want to short-circuit that endless cycle, so I'm trying to remind myself I don't want to say lower my expectations, but more to recognize that my expectations may mislead me. My expectations will affect my experience. And I have to remind myself to lean into the right kind of expectations, like it should be a good story, and competently made, and it should provide a few Star Wars surprises. Which brings me back to my Rebels rewatch that I haven't started yet, because I thought of something. What if it's truly an Ahsoka story and all the characters from Rebels are more like cameos than regulars on the show? I mean, is there a world where only one character from Rebels appears in each episode? So episode 1 could have Sabine, episode 2 could have Hera, episode 3 could have Chopper, and so on? And if that's the case, won't my expectation of it being a Rebels reunion ruin my experience? Likely, maybe, probably, I don't know. By the way, say ruin Rebels reunion 3 times fast. That's it. I can't believe I just made it through the sentence just now. My point being, I don't want to suffer my own anger and hate when the show doesn't deliver on my expectations based upon my speculation. I just want to enjoy it for what it is. But still, even recognizing that, I want to do my Rebels rewatch because, damn it, it's one of the best Star Wars shows, and I'm happy to revisit that era and those characters as much as I'm happy to watch the OT over and over. And I want to be able to give Ahsoka, and anything else coming up Star Wars, the same chance. But what do you think of speculation and expectations? Do you like finding out everything you can about a movie or show, or would you rather go into it cold? Let me know and get in on the conversation on Twitter or Instagram at Star Wars Mean to You. That's at Star Wars Mean the number 2 in the letter U. And if you don't want to miss an episode, hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, please give us a 5-star rating and review. Now, let's find out, what does Star Wars mean to Michael Barryte? My guest today wears many a hats. He is a creative director and producer. He writes the comic Obituary, a series about the living and the dead. He's an event coordinator for gaming charity streams, and he is the creator behind Belated Media and made the massively popular What If the Prequels Were Good?, where he examines the Star Wars Prequel trilogy as a Hollywood development executive might. And altogether, they have over 8 million views on YouTube. Please give a warm hello there to Michael Barryte.
Hi, everybody.
My first question I ask all my guests is, are you ready to tell everyone what does Star Wars mean to you?
Emphatically, yes.
So I always like to start with 5 with the Force. This is a standard set of 5 questions I ask all my guests, and it kind of gives a baseline of very generally where you are with Star Wars.
Sure.
Now, my first one, which Star Wars movie is your go-to favorite?
It's the first one that I saw, which is Return of the Jedi.
This one, next one, I need a 1d6. 3. Okay, so who is your favorite bounty hunter?
I feel like now it's Mandalorian Din Djarin.
I get that. He's one cool cat. I don't know why I said that. What is your favorite line to quote?
Ooh. Okay. This is sending me in a few different directions. I feel like are you talking Mimi lines to quote or just like casual? Oh man, I think like the easy one. The easy one is just like hello there. But I do think, oh man, oh gosh, you sent me like favorite line to quote. I'm just running between so many. I think actually, This Is the Way has gotten me pretty good.
Yeah, that must be one of the more popular ones now. I mean, it so quickly says Star Wars in the current climate.
Right.
And fits anything. It's like, I have to go to the grocery store. This is the way.
This is the right. And it's very impressive that they managed to find a May the Force be with you for this TV iteration of Star Wars.
Yeah, that's true.
Before that, I might have said, actually, I am one with the Force and whatever that clever flip that happened in Rogue One. However, it was presented one way and then it got flipped after he fell.
Yes.
There are a lot of good lines. There are a lot of good lines. And the fact that you threw that at me immediately sent me in a lot of different directions.
I tend to quote a lot of different things no matter what. Like today, like I did something that was slightly exhausting, like something that ended with a big sigh. And every time I end with a big sigh, I go, and I thought they smelled bad on the outside. Now, this next one, go ahead.
Oh no! You've just like set me down a path of a lot of other lines, and I'm going to spare us just having a line-orama.
Okay. Can you do any Star Wars impressions or impersonations?
I feel I do a fairly decent Palpatine. Hold on, let me. Lord Vader, rise. Like specifically, right? More like episode 3 Palpatine, because he's a lot more croaky, and it's now I'm just trying to think of exact lines, and I absolutely can't. But it's like, it seems in your aggression, some like he just you killed. Like have I ever told? Like I mean, Ian McDiarmid is just like chewing the scenery in episode 3 so hard, because he's a little more catty in 6 and more just jowls in 9. But let me, now I'm just trying to think of like, you will be the most powerful. Like he's like all up in there. Powerful Jedi the world has ever seen. Like it's fun. It's delightful. I can't really do anybody else, but also anytime I do it, it immediately kills my voice. But he's so do it. He's so fun. He's so fun.
He has been movies in just that he always seems to know what movie he's in, and he's just a joy to watch be evil.
Yeah, he's deliciously evil.
He's deliciously evil. He is the Hershey bar of evilness.
Indeed.
And my final question, besides the movies, what is your favorite Star Wars content? This could be a TV show, comic book, a novel, a game, RPG.
I'm going to say most recently it would be Andor. And a little before that was actually, I only recently listened through the entire Thrawn trilogy, and I thoroughly loved that.
Yes, it's a phenomenal read and listen.
Yeah, and it kind of kills me that I know that Thrawn has since appeared in like the canonical established world of Star Wars, but there are some aspects that I'm like, that stuff is very cool. And the fact that it has not yet been introduced like hurts me a little bit.
Which are the aspects that you really want introduced?
I think that correct me if I'm wrong, granted, I've not seen all the shows. I don't think that the Ysalamari or like Merkur as a planet have been introduced. And I think Ysalamari, like for those unfamiliar, they are lizards that mute the Force. And so when Luke and Mara Jade are sort of introduced into this world, they are like not aware fully. And also Thrawn uses the Ysalamari around him to shield him from the Dark Jedi. I'm blanking on the character's name.
Saboth Joris. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like from Sabayoth. Like, and so it's so clever. It gets to immediately showcase like both Thrawn is really, really smart, but also there's like a lot of stuff in the Star Wars universe that cancels out like the power ceiling, I guess, a little bit in creative ways.
Yeah, and it comes out of nature, really. It's just like an evolution more than any kind of technology or trick of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
So usually I start with, what was the first Star Wars movie you saw and that stuff. But I do want to, this is an interesting one because you have such a cool thing with what if the prequels were good. And it's something that came out, I believe, like 10 years ago.
Yeah, it did.
It's so there's just so much. There's so much I find interesting about it. And when I was talking to Ben Acker, and he brought it up,
which is a wild reality to me. The fact that I'm on his radar for that is nuts.
Then we were introduced, and I was like, well, it's Kismet. This is going to be great. I'm a very big optimist, and when I get nervous, I make stupid jokes, and so I apologize. I don't know why I'm nervous. It's like talking to an equal and a YouTube star, and it's...
You're being very generous in calling it a YouTube star.
But I think having 8 million views and being in the general consciousness of a Star Wars fanhood, i.e. like, what's his face from that 70s show who did, the cut of the prequels.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name. Topher Grace.
Yeah, Topher Grace, and I forget what the cut was called, but we'll call it the Topher Grace cut. There's certain things that out of the prequel trilogy has popped up that are very fascinating in reaction to it. And so I guess my first question about that is, how did you come about to do this? Were you kibitzing with your friends and were like, you know what, let's just shoot this because I've got something good here? Or was it a slow development?
It was definitely a percolation process in that I recall actually having a conversation with my friend Tyler Phillips, like very specifically, I recall where I was standing at like our friend Logan Stein's house in the backyard. And I just it hit me of like, why did Darth Maul have to die? Like, what if that were a thing? And this was years before that video came out, but that was something that always stuck with me. And we like riffed on that for a really long time. I mean, what the video initially was going to be was simply here are aspects of the prequels and specifically episode 1 that really hit home for me, because it was right around the time that the 3D re-release was happening. And so I just was trying to capitalize on, hey, we're thinking about the prequels. I know everybody dunked on them at the time. Here, however, are a bunch of things that actually really worked. And it's a pity that, that people didn't appreciate them at the time.
Yeah.
However, the more that I sort of presented it, which really was almost like a top 10 of sorts, it started to have me, because usually the way that I would record those videos is just I'd have like a loose bit of scribbles that were like, here are the bullet points I'm going to hit, nothing heavily scripted. And then I just talk. And then I would take it into the edit, cut it down, and then I'd write out some more clear notes of like, you need to fill in this, you need to do that. And then it would be scripted from that point. So it started unscripted, became more scripted. But what I started just leaning more into was, I keep expounding off of, if these little things had been tweaked in one way or another, then these aspects would actually catapult us here, or this component would lead us there. And so things like Maul or expanding or swapping character ages and things like that were elements that I slowly came to realize, well, I'm not really making these are the hits. It's more the movie was so close. And if these little changes were made, I think everybody would have walked away in the more immediate vicinity of release saying, wow, this exactly delivers on what I believe Star Wars can and should be. But I actually hold the episode 1 in fairly high esteem, like independent of headcanon changes. I think a lot of what episode 1 did was really cool. But that's,
well,
yeah.
One thing I really liked, and I also thought about a lot, is the idea that Darth Maul should have come back in episode 2 as a half robot or half man, half machine character. And then episode 3, he should have been more devastated, like, oh God, why am I blanking? Grievous, General Grievous, with the coughing fit. I thought it would also be a good way to show how the Emperor's tinkering with technology and the Force to kind of create the perfect combination in order to get a person who had enough organic material to be able to use the Force, but enough technology to be a badass. And when I heard that on kind of your pitch, it like sunk up right away for me. I thought it was great.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, a lot of what Maul, I feel, offered beyond just incredible iconography was like a heavy level of both mystery, intrigue, foreboding, and the fact that after the fact, everyone was like, oh, well, he's in Clone Wars, is like, yeah, but that's a small screen conclusion to a big screen introduction, which feels very reductive in some ways. And it's an odd payoff to bury something like that 7 seasons down the line. Granted, I understand that you don't need to watch all 7 seasons in order to get that arc payoff, but it's a high ask, I think, for a lot of people just on the outside looking in of like, wait, I need to watch all of, even saying 22 episodes.
Yeah. So you created these, they seem, if I remember correctly, they came out about 2 years apart each.
Was it really that short? It feels like the jump from 1 to 2 was, well, the thing that was also interesting in the jump from 1 to 2 was, in the case of 1, I was using pre-existing footage that I was simply trying to splice together to make it kind of align with what I was saying. However, at the point that Darth Maul is alive and characters are being swapped around and we're in different locations and situations are very, very different from what their feature counterparts actually were, I realized, I need to be commissioning a storyboard artist to do that. So I reached out to my friend Jackie Whistler, and then she was very gracious in producing all of those boards. And that was something that then we had a working relationship going forward with 3, because we had figured out like character models and all that sort of stuff, and more or less figured out our systems. But I definitely also went in, I think when I approached 2, I was also thinking a little bit about 3, but I hadn't fully nailed down everything that needed to happen in 3, which is...
So it's kind of like the sequel trilogy.
I mean, no, because I had an end point. I knew where I needed to end. and that's obviously very helpful. And one of the things that I also was trying to do in all of the cases was making sure that the beginnings and endings of each movie were more or less the same. So like the middle chunks obviously were going to change up a lot, but the basic beats of like where we're starting and where we're ending in the larger like Star Wars saga shouldn't feel too disparate.
Now, as you were doing these, did you get a new appreciation for the prequel trilogy at all? Or was it more of a almost creative exercise in seeing where you could go within the confines you just described of trying to end where they ended?
It was born out of being a creative exercise first and foremost, just as, can I do this? How does this work? It's also something that I tend to just do as like a for funsies. And I really do enjoy anytime that a friend will send a script and I get to note the hell out of it and just be like, hey, I was noticing these arcs seem a little off. Like I do like playing script doctor. So in that regard, this was scratching an itch, but in a substantially larger world than anything I customarily would deal with. But the other aspect that was interesting, or I suppose the other thing that's interesting is if you look at all of the Star Wars films, I have probably watched episode 2 and episode 3 more than any other Star Wars film as a result of this project. And episode 2 remains to probably be one of, if not my least favorite of the films overall. So but even then, like there's a good amount of fun to be had in that film. And I think that's one thing that Lucas didn't get enough credit for at the time, was just how much more new stuff he was presenting people with. And as opposed to like, he so easily could have fan serviced the heck out of these things. And yeah, there are definite nods throughout, but he's throwing in completely new races, new planets, new aspects to things that I think recontextualize a lot of it, which is one of the reasons why I think that episode 1 is so neat, because the moment you go back to Tatooine, you're like, oh, we're going to the cantina. It's like, no, did you know that there is a slave trade here and you're just thrown? Or the fact that there's pod racing. These are aspects of this planet that immediately create another layer of depth to it. So it's more than just moisture farms and dusty cantinas with a few Jawas and Tusken Raiders about. Like it's substantially more built out. And I think that the world is, I mean, the most impressive thing about Star Wars is just the world is so vast and expansive.
Yeah, it's very true.
Cinema Craptaculous is your podcast destination for all things movies, good and bad, streaming series, good and bad, and pop culture, good, bad, and the ugly. You get a totally different show every week, such as People Also Watched with Adam, Dave, and Tara. They're 3 industry insiders who always find the hilarity in the big-budget feature and the lesser-known feature you may have missed. There is, of course, the Expanded Universe. This is your place to geek out. John, Doc, and S'more are your geek experts to talk about what's going on in the world of streaming series, movies, superheroes, pretty much any showbiz geek topic, they're going to talk about it. And, of course, there's the show that started it all, Cinema Craptaculous, with Stephanie, John, and Dave. You don't even need to have seen the movies these guys talk about to have a good time. So what are you waiting for? Go and subscribe to Cinema Craptaculous wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.
In the past years since this has gone up, do you feel as though your opinion has changed about the prequel trilogy at all? Or has your opinion changed about the guy who put these things up back in the late 2000s?
Sure. Well, I definitely, at the time that I put these things up, realized that people were fans of Star Wars. I did not realize how much people, like, I unknowingly held up a lightning rod and a lot of people came after me in both in the praise category and also in the how could you possibly attack this thing? You're an asshole. And probably saying a few things a little nastier than that. But, don't read the comments.
Now I have to go read the comments right now. In fact, why don't you sit there while I read them aloud to you? I'm joking. Now, I apologize.
You told me that this wasn't a gotcha show, and here I am.
And here you got me. I do want to ask about that fan reaction, because I feel like in general, not knowing anything about anything, that you'd have more praise than attack.
It was largely positive, and I was unprepared for that, because my channel at the time, I think, was something like, for episode 1, had about 2,000 subscribers, and over the span of 36 to 48 hours, it had multiplied by about 50 in size.
Jeez.
And it's funny because at the time I was working as an editor for Smosh, which is a comedy YouTube channel. They do sketches, and at the time they were one of the largest channels on YouTube. And so I was accustomed to numbers of an average video would get, couple 100,000 views. I'm off in the corner making my own YouTube videos that get a couple hundred views, and all of a sudden I put out this video that hits the front page of Reddit, gets a Slash Film article, gets passed around, gets a tweet from Patton Oswalt, and I'm just losing my mind in my bedroom as not really sure what to do. I was even contacted by Jonathan Liebsman, the director of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Michael Bay iteration. Yeah. And he had me come to the Paramount lot, and he was like, I want you to do what you did for the Star Wars thing to the Turtles script. Unfortunately, there was a stall out and we didn't end up working together, but I was ready to go. And I bought a bunch of TMNT comics, and I reached out to all my friends, and I'm like, look, I know not that much about it, but I'm willing to learn. But so there was this cyclone for around the first one in particular that really caught me off guard. And then I think when the second one happened, there was obviously expectations of, this guy's gonna hit it out of the park, which that does a number on you.
Yeah. And well, now you know how George Lucas feels.
100%. Right? Everybody gives J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson guff for the sequel trilogy, and I am not envious of them in any regard, because that, in the nicest way possible, was you weren't going to make everyone happy. There were very few ways that it could have happened. Even Colin Trevorrow, however that iteration could or would have gone. But I mean, what people claim they want, what they actually want, what they can provide and get, it's a tricky dance to do. And I'm very happy that I managed to dance it well enough that people wanted a second and then a third one. But yeah, I'm very grateful.
And again, I did say this is not gotcha, and I hope this doesn't feel like a gotcha question, but did you feel a little more resentment or hostility for your second and third one, where people were disappointed in what you did?
No, because I feel actually largely the reception was positive enough anyway. Yeah. The larger resentment actually comes from, because there is a hint of it is, I finished 3 and they're like, oh, when are you going to do another one of these for other things? And at around that time in 2016, I put out an animated pilot that I was hoping to, be pitching around, which now exists as a comic. And it's one of those things, anytime people reach out and they're like, why aren't you doing more what if things? Or why aren't you doing episode 7 or 8 or 9? I'm like, well, because I want to be working on my own stuff rather than correcting other people's stuff. I'd like to be working in this industry, and I never want people to feel like the quote unquote corrections that I'm making are being dismissive of the work that people have put into things. Yeah. And I think in some cases, people presume that the reason that I made these videos was to be like, these videos are garbage. And that's not where it comes from. It purely comes from, I thought this would be a fun creative exercise that then was turned into a bit of a pressure cooker for myself by external forces and feeling the need to deliver on an unmade but somewhat made promise. So it's not really like a full set of resentment, but there is the part of me that is like, why can't you just love me for me and the stories that I have to tell? Why do they have to be Star Wars always?
Hearing you talk about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles opportunity, whether it fell through or not, but as you said that you called up your friends and were like, I don't know a lot about it, and you bought the comics, it dawned on me how much the Star Wars What If was born out of pure love, because you're so familiar with the material and knew it so well that you were able to extrapolate all these different things, as you said, like almost on the fly, because you were describing, you would just talk it out, record it, and then refine it. Which to me says you have a great love for the movies.
Yeah, I mean, Star Wars films were definitely formative films. Like I remember going to the midnight screening of episode 3. I remember when my former roommate and like long time best friend, Alex Kramer, had his, I forget which birthday, but when episode 1 came out, like we all were front row, or not front row, but like comfortable front seating at AMC to see that. I remember the excitement around, like, I got the book, the novelization of episode 1. I remember reading that in a tent while we were camping in the lead up to it, because we'd go on like summer trips. And so like I'd have the books for it and I'd be reading through that and I'd be like kind of cross-referencing like, oh, there's like it's very funny because in the novelization, at least as I remember, Jar Jar is presented as like a sympathetic and like almost exile, like he's in exile, but due to like circumstances beyond his control. Whereas in the movie, it's presented like he is directly related to it. Whereas I just found like the jump from page to screen, I was like, that's very interesting because I didn't perceive him as this.
Yeah.
So maybe I hold Jar Jar more fondly because of the book, but and episode 2, I'm sure I have some memories attached to it, but that's not the ones that stand out.
Now, did it change your day-to-day life? I mean, did you really get absorbed into Star Wars, or was that something that didn't come until the prequel trilogy?
It really didn't hit until the prequel trilogy. The prequel trilogy was when there were 2 aspects that got me. Aspect 1, KFC and Taco Bell ran a competition that had like pogs of like Collect the Galaxy or something like that. Yeah. Much in the way of the McDonald's Monopoly game, where if you match 3 in a system, like you can win a jet ski. And for whatever reason, I don't know, young Michael thought that was the coolest thing. And all of a sudden we were going to KFC a lot to get those pogs. I never won anything, but as a result, I was like really obsessed with learning all the different systems. I was like, oh, this is Naboo. Okay, it's interesting. All right. And that's over here. Okay. The other aspect that got me, and this is completely independent, but it was just something that happened. It was episode 3 came out, I believe, if not my senior year in high school. And in addition to obviously going to the theater and dressing up and doing that whole, like, you know, we're all going to be Jedi and midnight release thing, we also were like, oh, we should make our own lightsabers. And I say make our own lightsabers, not buy our own lightsabers, make our own lightsabers. So what we would do is we would get PVC pipe, and then we would wrap electrical tape around it of the color that we wanted. So there was a lot of red, blue, and green electrical tape that we would buy, and then we'd be able to have duels that would leave bruises on you. But like everybody in the theater program that we were at, like all got a little too in on it and made different lightsabers. I'm really bummed because actually in the lead up to this, I was wondering if I still had mine somewhere at my parents' place, and I couldn't find it in my closet. But that was like, we have little like duels in the parking lot after rehearsal or something, and of course like be playing, you know, Duel of the Fates off of someone's iPod, the whole hokey thing. But that was a good amount of fun.
So a lot of your friends were into Star Wars as well.
I would say my roommate of forever, I've already mentioned him once before, Alex Kramer. He is like the biggest Star Wars fan that I know. He puts me to shame, and always my sort of go-to whenever I would be like, hey, I was going to make this thing, like I need to run the story by you. He'd always be the sounding board and also be the like actually corrections department. If ever I were like, oh, it's not a Cerulean cruiser, it's a something else that he knows the terms for, because I'm very bad with all that. Or like he's like, actually it's pronounced this, and they actually appeared in this thing once before. He also made me an itemized chronological watch order for the Clone Wars that I have still not fully watched through, because the Clone Wars goes in a not sequential order, but he compiled a full spreadsheet and was like, this is the order you need to. These episodes and arcs are not necessary, but like might be entertaining. He did it all. He's great. Follow him on Twitter at Sham Sandwich.
Sham Sandwich.
Sham Sandwich.
I'll put that in the podcast notes.
Thank you. He'll appreciate that. He'll be very confused.
Okay, so we talked about the prequel trilogy. Now moving on to the sequel trilogy, but before we get there, because your what ifs came out between prequel and the sequel trilogies.
That's true.
What was your feeling when you heard Disney bought Lucasfilm and was planning on releasing new Star Wars?
There was a hesitant level of optimism. I mean, I knew for a fact, okay, this means that we're going to be getting more Star Wars. However, I'm somebody who has been pretty vocal about not loving nostalgia as like the primary pump to drive content. So aspects like, you know, Andor, which are like a spinoff, but it's largely almost exclusively dealing with like new elements and aspects, is really exciting to me. Whereas the Obi-Wan series, while interesting, did not necessarily make me be like, finally, we get to fill in the like gap between 3 and 4. Like, that's what I need. I absolutely watched it and did enjoy it, but it wasn't something that I felt like filled the world in. It just filled in like the gray a little bit with like a few shades of like different colors. But
it was an opportunity to bring God, I can't think of his name, but it was an opportunity to bring Obi-Wan back.
Yeah. Like, I mean, look, if I'm being real, the one thing that I've been hoping for ages, and I know that it is very unlikely that it will happen, is I have wanted a Qui-Gon Jinn story, because I think that he's one of the most fascinating characters that was necessarily taken from us, but just the fact that he was like a Jedi who believed in like weird mysticism, was a little morally gray, and obviously had seen some stuff like and has like a high disregard for authority. All of those elements make him very interesting to me. So that's my like, hey, Disney, if you're listening and you really want me to just be ranting and raving about your show, literally. Also, I think that Liam Neeson did like an incredible job with the limited amount of like what he was able to do in episode 1. Like, I just think he knocked it out of the park.
Where do you stand on the idea of recasting him in order to tell a young Qui-Gon Jinn, or recasting Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian or Ahsoka or wherever Luke Skywalker might appear next?
I mean, the one thing that I would simply request is please don't use deep fakes. Like, I'm so I know that everybody got really everybody came down very hard on Solo, and I think it was unfounded. I think perhaps because in the lead up to 9, roommate Alex Kramer and I rewatched all of the films in chronological order to get to 9. So we watched like and Solo and Rogue One were like pocketed into that mix as well. And in rewatching it, I was struck by how much more I enjoyed it. And I think a lot of people just went into that film going, well, is he going to be doing Harrison Ford? And he isn't doing exactly Harrison Ford, but the character, the persona of Han Solo is captured. There are moments that feel so specifically Han that it is really unfortunate that a handful of things were teed up in that film for there to be more with Donald Glover and I think her name is Kira and the Emilia Clarke's character. And like all Crimson Dawn, like there were aspects that were being introduced that I was like, oh, this is going to be very interesting. And we're going to be seeing, another facet to a character who, we know, but we don't know all these little elements to. So I think people need to stop being so precious about things. Like it's now this foregone conclusion of looking to Bond as a good example. There is always a cycle that happens. Bond is announced. Everybody goes, oh my gosh, him? They get really annoyed. The first movie comes out and everybody goes, wow, he embodies Bond, but he's different and blah, 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 blah. And then he goes through the cycle and then he's about to retire. And what will we ever do? Who will ever replace Bond? New Bond is announced. Oh my gosh, why would they pick this person? Like
I used to think James T. Kirk could never be recast. But then Chris Pine did it and did a really great job. And then someone else is on Strange New Worlds. They have a new Kirk. And so now this character has been recast at least 3 times or 2 times. And the franchise keeps moving forward. And I think there needs to be a little bit of that in the Star Wars franchise in order for us to get maybe some of the stories we want, some of the stories we don't know that we want, and to maybe even move beyond these stories themselves. I know that sounds cart before the horse, but the idea that it's like, okay, we can put these actors as these characters to rest and move forward.
Right. Well, it's sort of in some ways, and I've held this theory for a little bit, but it's almost a religiosity that's been attached to, and it's true with a lot of pop culture, but
yes,
there is a sort of perception of what blank is, in this case, Star Wars. And there are various degrees of zealothood that exist where some people say, well, you're not really a Star Wars fan if you haven't watched all the movies and the shows and also are familiar with the extended universe books and this and that and have played the games and are, blah, blah. Then there are other people who, let's call them the Calvinists, and they're the ones who have only watched the movies and they've only watched the numbered ones, and that's fine. And then there are the other people who have only watched the animated ones, and they're the Lutherans. And you fracture off, and that's just kind of what pop culture is now, that's what fandoms are, is just like varying degrees. And so I think there's a movement that is happening or that will happen when a character is inevitably recast. And there will be those like staunch people who are like, no, it's just Old Testament. You can't like Luke is always and forever Mark Hamill, and anyone else is a golden calf, and we will not stand for that. So
that's an amazing, apt analogy. It really is. But based off of that, what sect are you then?
What sect am I? I'm definitely I am engaging with it as much as it appeals to me, but I'm not feeling beholden to engage with everything. I have watched a little bit of Clone Wars. I've not watched any of Rebels or The Bad Batch. I've watched all the live action shows, I believe. And I've watched all of the movies, including the Star Wars Holiday Special. But but I've not, and I've read the Thrawn trilogy, but beyond that, I've not read and the episode 1 novelization. Beyond that, I've not read any additional books or comics or anything like that. I have played the board game Star Wars Rebellion. It's really good, but I don't know how much it contributes to canon. Honestly, if you are looking for a great 1v1 asymmetric experience that probably lasts a little bit longer than anybody's prepared for, at least initially, Star Wars Rebellion is incredible.
So what is your favorite Star Wars memory?
Favorite Star Wars memory? That is me stalling.
I stall the same way.
Yeah. Favorite Star Wars memory. I think my favorite recent Star Wars memory was the audible gasp experienced across the theater in episode 8 when the Holdo maneuver happened. And the silence that hit everybody. Yeah. And like I realized moments before I think the collective realized what Laura Dern was about to do. And I got so excited because I was like, holy shit, we've never experienced this before. What's about to happen? And for the audio to cut right when it happened, so you just got that audible gasp from the audience, was really, in my mind, like why you see these films in theaters, because those moments are unparalleled. And, you know, it's similar to when a like Cap on your left in Endgame, like everybody was like, oh my gosh, and lose their mind in the theater. Those are the like magical big screen moments that you just get so excited about. But that one was one that definitely, I mean, I'm sure that there was something that was more recent than that, but that is the one that jumps to mind.
That's an amazing moment. And for all the reasons you said, the way it's edited and that sound, I'm just repeating what you just said, so I'm going to stop here. But it is true that it's a phenomenal moment in that movie. So let me ask you this. What are the top 3 elements that make Star Wars to you?
I'm not sure how broad or granular I should be with this.
As much as you want. It's
I know you're
truly an open-ended.
Right. Oh, I know. But I feel like there's a lot of weight riding on this. You've had a lot of people answer this question before, and I want to be worthy of being within their ranks. And so this answer is what hinges whether or not I make it onto that, like, I don't know, Hall of Fame. I think mysticism. Mm-hmm. And I think that comes in a handful of different forms. I think we've seen it first as just the Force in sort of the larger Skywalker saga, but that's been spun out a little more recently in Mandalorian with the Creed. And there's like a religiosity there that is very, very cool. And so that's got like a mystic element in the fact that like Bo-Katan is sort of communing with like myth. I think that those sort of aspects are really awesome. I think, what was the exact question? The wording of the question?
What are the top 3 elements that make Star Wars for you?
Inventiveness. And I think that, again, comes in a handful of forms, but I think presenting new elements to that which is familiar is always going to just send shockwaves across the brain as you suddenly go, wait, oh my gosh, there's this aspect of this planet that I had no idea about. And then I think the baseline is like, it's rooted in human relationships. Like the best moments are the moments where it is brother and sister, father and son, coming to terms with their humanity in a absolute fantasy wild space. Yes. But it's also one of the reasons why I think for me that episode 6 does hold such a firm place for me, because like at the end of the day, it is all about all of these relationships kind of like hitting very definitive punctuation marks for them. And, you know, them clearly stating how they feel towards one another. So it's one of the reasons why, for me, one of the most powerful lines is, I am a Jedi like my father before me, which just got me to like, it gets me every time. I can't say it without cracking a little emotionally, but I think that like that speaks to how strongly that Luke both believes in the Force and believes in the good in his father, which is also something that I try to carry with me in my day to day. I want to believe that there's good in everyone and that they like aren't going to be forever Darth Vader. So I think that, you know, I managed to at least rope two of those things into one moment. I can't say to the third, but you know, I suppose that's those are my three.
It's a good three. And what I really appreciate about them, one is the mysticism where you brought up Bo-Katan and how there is a mysticism in Mandalorian. And I've been a little critical of Mandalorian because they're dealing with kind of this cult. But you reframed that in my head of it's more of an alternate mysticism within the Star Wars universe. And I find that now kind of very intriguing. So I'm going to like watch Mandalorian with kind of a different POV because of your answer. And then the inventiveness, I also think happens behind the camera as well.
Oh,
where
yes.
The kit bashing, the effects, like at least for the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, they were always right on. They were the tip of the spear for developing new special effects and techniques of filmmaking, and that's incredibly inventiveness as well.
And even now with Mandalorian and using the sort of Unreal and like those wide screens to present and be economical at the same time.
What are you looking forward to in the future of Star Wars, and what would you like to see?
I sort of leaned on part of that already with the Qui-Gon origin sort of piece, but I think I'm most excited by seeing stuff, which is just overly I'm most excited in seeing stuff that I haven't seen in any form before. So aspects like Ahsoka are fine. Aspects like, you know, things that are story adjacent are okay. But like there was talk ages ago of like, oh, we're going like way back to like the first Jedi. I think there was like a rumbling of, I don't even know who was attached to it, but like that to me is fascinating of like, are we talking like prehistoric? Like what is that? What is the like the person who was the first Jedi? Like, what does that seem like? Or was there a time when the Jedi and the Sith like coexisted? Like,
well, that's interesting.
Those are the sort of like bizarro scenarios I'm really intrigued by. That said, I have been kind of loving the weird like politickiness of Andor. Like when Beau Willimon's name hit the credits, I think like 6 or 7 episodes in, and he did like the 3 episodes around the prison. I was like, wait. Are you telling me that we got House of Cards writing on this? Like I was very like the writing team that they got for Andor is just, I've been so blown away by, and they've just managed to like ground things in really interesting and nuanced ways. And I think it's very fun to be seeing a side of Star Wars that doesn't have lightsabers and minimal blaster fire. And it's more just the ticky tacky goings on of what does it feel like when an oppressive regime is slowly kind of tightening its hands around you. Like, how do you escape? So I think I'm most excited by sort of new takes or different spins on what we think we're familiar with. Like those are always the most intriguing to me. I also appreciate, and I suppose maybe this is speaking more just like broadly, but I have been loving the casting that they have done as far as like you've got Amy Sedaris in there, you've got Bill Burr, like, and all of them, like, like I love when people are like, wait, why did you cast this person? And then they absolutely knock it out of the park. Like that, I think giving more people unlikely opportunities within the Star Wars universe is going to net you more wins than losses. And I think Star Wars is all about taking risks rather than, you know, you can offer us Jedi and like the power fantasy and all that, but like Throw us some scrappy mechanic who has relationships with Jawas. I want that.
Yeah.
That's very funny.
Well, it's using the world that's there
Mhm.
and finding a new way to explore interspecies relations, I guess is what I'm saying.
I mean, look,
That feels uncomfortable now.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're even like 2 steps away from winding up with a show that's all about like the death sticks industry and just being like, all right, we got like a Mad Men thing going on. Like, who's the Don Draper of that universe to try to spin death sticks? Like, yeah, this guy came back from a bar and he says he doesn't want to sell death sticks anymore. He wanted to rethink his life, and that made us rethink our branding.
That would be pretty spectacular. That would be a good, at least a short.
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean,
that's something I'm sure that like Robot Chicken would have had a heyday with if they haven't already done that.
So my final question to you.
Yes.
You go to Skywalker Ranch, and there at the gates, George Lucas greets you. What do you say to him?
I'd say thank you. Just plainly, thank you for creating this incredibly unique world and also pioneering so much of how Hollywood operates today. Like, I mean, he is one of the biggest movers and shakers from like the 70s on. He's formed cataclysmic shifts within the industry. And I mean, one thing that I truly do wish for George Lucas is that I hope he feels good about all of this, because I know when the sequel trilogy started to come out, he said some fairly disparaging things about Disney in general. And I would love for him to be feeling positive about that. I'd love for him to have a win in some form. There's the part of me that secretly hopes he's been like ghost directing movies that he's been just submitting to Sundance, and then they succeed, and then he gets to come out and be like, it was me the whole time. You know, rather than us quietly being like, well, he basically directed Red Tails. Like, no, I want him to like actually get a moment in the sun beyond.
Yeah.
You know, he's left a huge legacy. He's built one of the largest sci-fi fantasy franchises of all time. And, you know, that's no small feat. And I have nothing but respect for him and everything he's done for the industry. So I just hope he's happy more than anything. I hope he's happy.
Yeah. I think that's nice. I think that's beautiful. It was great talking to you. And I love that you clearly love the prequel trilogy as well as the original trilogy. I know it has faults. I know it could be improved, but I think what you did was, well, I've said it and I'll say it again, out of a love for the material to begin with. And I think a lot of people hate on it, especially like my generation, my age, and we're finding that hate is unfounded. And
yeah, it's easy to find fault and nitpick and hate on a project, but it's a lot harder sometimes to cultivate and nourish the things that are good about a project. And as you know, here's one that, as far as like quotes go, it's like fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. And I don't think anybody who hates on Star Wars or hates on movies in general is going to be in the best of places. And so I would always encourage you, when you are looking at something negatively, try to spin it positively. Or, you know, it's one of those, like, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Like, just find a thing you like and chase after that, rather than bitching on a forum or online or on Twitter or on Reddit. Like, don't do that.
very well said.
I learned from the best, Yoda.
Yeah, I think we all did a little bit.
Oh, indeed.
I hope. Michael, thank you so much for joining me and telling the world what Star Wars means to you. It's been a pleasure. And let's do this again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
So that's what Star Wars means to Michael Barryte. You can find him on Twitter and YouTube at Belated Media. Also, check out his online comic, Obituary, a series about the living and the dead. All these links are in the podcast notes. Through our conversation, Michael really showed how little credit George Lucas got for showing us something new in the Star Wars universe. The prequels do a lot of world building, spectacular world building. And I really admired that Michael admitted that one of his least favorite Star Wars movies, Episode 2, still had a ton of fun in it. And it does. Now, did Michael's point of view change your mind on anything? Did you make lightsabers as a kid to fight your friends? And have you played the Rebellion board game? Let us know and get in on the conversation on Twitter or Instagram at Star Wars Mean to You. That's at Star Wars Mean, the number 2, and the letter U. And hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. If you're liking the show, please give us a 5-star rating and review. And remember, the Force will be with you, always. Hi, this is Dave, and before we get to the show, I wanted to ask you a favor. One of our goals this year is to grow the show so that What Does Star Wars Mean to You reaches more listeners, and that's where we're asking you for help. And it's really easy. Wherever you listen to us, please hit that subscribe button. If you're liking the show, give us a 5-star rating and review on the platform you listen to us. We make a lot of fun of the algorithm and the smash that button thing, but it really does help us get noticed by new fans. And if you want to join in on the conversation, find us on social at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 in the letter U. Now, let's chat some Star Wars.